The Hispanic mark and the Kingdom of Asturias already had a border between them. A large Christian front in the north of the peninsula that could overrun the emirate if it did not act quickly. A battle of great magnitudes was brewing. In previous videos I have commented on how the Franks began to create the Hispanic March, as well as the internal disputes that were in the city of Pamplona, which will now be of great importance. And consider subscribing to the channel and becoming a member to financially support this project, if you like my work. I continue. Practically only Pamplona and its surroundings in the Pyrenees area remain in the hands of Melis. The rest of the mountain range is already in Frankish hands, which is what is known as the Hispanic March. In the year 812, Ludovico Pio, or if we translate it, Louis the Pious, last living son of Charlemagne and therefore heir to the empire, decided to finish forming the Hispanic March. But first, let's see what the situation was like in Pamplona. There are two major families vying for power: the Velasco, allies of the Franks, and the Inigo, allies of the Muslims. Neither of the two families managed to gain total control of the region. And of course Al-Hakam on one hand and Ludovico on the other were attentive to how these disputes were unfolding. Ludovico crossed the Pyrenees with his troops, and without the need to fight, with mere intimidation, he gained power for the Velascos. So now, yes, the entire Pyrenean mountain range was allied with the Franks. I have raised the flag of the Franks. But it's not like Ludovico directly ruled these cities. Let's just say they depended on the Franks, but they were not yet kingdoms. Al-Hakam could not allow this. If the entire north was Christian, could they support each other to attack his emirate? He decided to start preparing a campaign that would attack the area of present-day Navarre, to, as in the previous video, break the union between the Franks and the Asturians. While preparing this campaign, Alfonso II was strengthening and enriching the Kingdom of Asturias. This peace that indirectly the Franks were gifting him, thanks to keeping the Muslims entertained, it allowed him to continue professionalizing his army and build large buildings in Oviedo. Finally, in the year 816, Al-Hakam ordered Karim, a veteran general whom we have seen in action several times on the channel, to lead a powerful army to the north, not towards Oviedo as in the past. Those times when they could directly loot the Asturian capital seemed to have ended, at least for the moment. The target would be Navarre. The Muslim troops marched north, and on May 25th of the year 816 by the Orón River, they encountered the Christian troops. Here was Velasco, the governor of Pamplona, ally of the Franks, Sancho, the best knight of Pamplona according to Moorish sources, and probably Alfonso II himself. Between both armies was the Orón River, which goes from the Pancorvo Gorge to Miranda del Ebro. So this battle is known as the Battle of the Orón River, or the Battle of Pancorvo. The map of the battle could be something like this, but don't take it literally either, as it is a recreation based on what the Muslim chronicles narrate. As you can see, behind the Christian positions there are large steep slopes. As we will see throughout the battle, it is not the ideal position, because if the Christian army is defeated, how does it flee? Well, let's start with the battle. That day neither side lifted a finger, but at dawn the next day the ectomorph made a move. Karim ordered a general attack through the river fords. He had to break the Christian front and open the way to Pamplona. Seeing the movement of the Umayyads, the Christians rushed to the fords and prepared to defend them. In the end, crossing a river could be said to be similar to jumping a wall. You can only attack at specific points, and that's where the defender will concentrate their forces. The Christian archers quickly formed and began to open fire on the ford. The Muslim warriors began to fall, struck by the projectiles, but armed with courage they continued to advance and finally crashed into the Asturian shields. The Muslim archers could not fire on the Christian infantry, as they risked causing friendly fire. And they also didn't have the Christian archers within their reach, so they couldn't support their comrades. The Christian archers, for their part, could fire at the fort where the Muslims were waiting their turn to clash with the Christian infantry. The hand-to-hand combat lasted for hours until Al-Hakam ordered the retreat. He had lost too many men, and it didn't seem like he was going to break the Christian front. The Moorish troops moved away from the Christian infantry, turned around and trotted back towards their positions. But then the Christian commanders ordered the army to go on the offensive. If they could exploit this small Muslim defeat and pursue them now as they retreated to their camp, perhaps they could turn this orderly retreat into a free-for-all. The Christian troops crossed the fort in a hurry, in pursuit of the infidels, but since the retreat was orderly, Al-Hakam was able to organize his defense. He had his men form a solid front, and they resisted the Christian impact. The Christian troops did not expect to encounter this resistance, but despite this, they continued fighting and pressing. However, suddenly the Muslims stopped retreating and the combat stalled. The Christian commanders did not know whether to send the entire reserve, including archers, to pressure the Muslims and risk being defeated, or to maintain the reserve on their side of the river, in case things went south. And indeed, the Christian infantry began to retreat. The Muslims began to gain ground, and it was time for the Christians to withdraw. The retreat was less orderly than the Muslim one, and thanks to the Christian reserve, the flight would not turn into a slaughter. But the Muslims launched the assault for the second time in the day. They crossed the pass and pounced on the Christian reserve. They could not resist the push of the entire Umayyad army and began to retreat. The Christian commanders feared the worst. Suddenly, the Christian defense line broke and the entire Christian army was forced to retreat. But retreat to where? There was nothing more than a steep hill behind them, and the Christian army began to bunch up in front of the ravines. Al-Hakam saw himself as the victor and ordered his army to finish off the Christians. The Muslims had surrounded the Christians and were crushing them against the mountains. The Christians were defending themselves as best they could, but they had no room to maneuver. The morale of the Navarrese Asturians was at rock bottom, but they were fighting for their own survival. They couldn't surrender, for after the massacres they had caused to the infidels in recent years, they wouldn't find their forgiveness. Some Christians, many of them archers who were the closest to the slopes, began to climb these hills. At first it was just a way to escape the massacre, but somehow they were positioning themselves on the hill and on the slope, and they began to open fire on the Muslims. Whether they were arrows, javelins, or stones, anything that could kill was thrown at the enemy. The Muslim troops, seeing themselves attacked from above, probably thought they were Christian reinforcements and began to retreat. The Saracen troops returned to their shore, and the Christians were able to regroup on theirs. They had narrowly avoided defeat. After long hours of fighting and hundreds and thousands of dead and wounded on both sides, they were back where they started, each on their side of the river. Over the following days, neither side wanted to take the initiative to avoid suffering heavy casualties. Instead, they began building defenses, stakes, and palisades on both sides of the river. They would protect the armies. The days went by and only skirmish parties fought each other. A few arrows were fired, 1 or 2 men died, and they retreated. Nothing serious, it was a moment of tension, almost a battle of attrition, to see who would run out of supplies or who would lose patience and launch an attack. 13 days later, it started to rain. It was torrential. The river multiplied its flow and the water flooded everything. The flooded and collapsed trenches, the weakened embankments, and the 2 completely muddy banks. A complete mud pit, which reminds me of the mud battle that I leave you up here. On June 2nd, the Muslims finally withdrew. Was this a Christian victory? If we consider it a victory, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. I would rather say it was a draw. Stay Both sides saw that continuing the battle would not change anything. What the Christians had achieved was a strategic victory. The great Muslim offensive that would retake Pamplona had failed. Would this guarantee Frankish power in the north? No. It turns out that Ludovico Pio, now turned into an emperor, decided that his empire required his troops and his money elsewhere, that the south didn't matter much. So he would stop actively supporting the Hispanic March. Among others, he would stop supporting the Velascos in Pamplona. Do you remember who opposed the Velascos? Was it the Ínigos? So after this battle, in which there were so many casualties that lasted so long, and whose objective was to ensure that Pamplona remained an ally of the Franks and stayed open, the land connection between the Kingdom of Asturias and the Carolingian Empire had been for nothing. And I ask you, do you think Alfonso II should have strongly supported the Velasco to ally with him once the Franks abandoned them? After all, they had fought together in the Battle of the Orón River. And perhaps it would be a way to show Europe, and specifically the Emirate, that they were capable of influencing outside their kingdom. Leave me your opinion in the comments. And for now, I end the video here. But get ready, because in the coming times we are going to know an adventure worthy of the Iliad starring a group of Cordobans.